Right. Hello everybody, good afternoon. My name is Andrew, and this is Everett, and we're going to be taking you aboard the Stolt Effort. Okay, to start off, here's an overview of what we'll be talking about. We'll start by talking about our arrival, and then cargo operations, our departure, the many detours we took, life at sea, an incident we witnessed, and our time in South Africa. So, starting off, the Stolt Effort, it was an innovation class ship. It was a chemical tanker, and it was 25 years old. It was the last of its kind, and by that I mean it bankrupted Danyard, which was the shipyard that made it. So this ship was equipped with all of the newest, most expensive bells and whistles available, and because of that, the yard was unable to complete it in time. And so it's actually unfinished. It's missing a deck house, a garbage room, and a low temperature cooler, so nothing important. Our arrival, we flew into Houston a couple of days before Christmas, and an agent from Stolt picked us up. It was kind of like a movie. He was wearing a black leather jacket, he had sunglasses on, and an earpiece, and he was holding up a sign that said Stolt crewmates. So that was pretty cool. Also, everything was paid for, which was really nice.
So, for the cargo operations, we were able to witness plenty of the cargo operations for the first 2 weeks or so, because we were in port. So, for the first week, we worked typical 4-on, 8-off ship shifts with the guys on deck. So, I was on the 8 to 12, you were on the 4 to 8. And basically, you work 8 to 12, both 8 to 12s all day. So, you work 8 to 12, you have 8 hours off, and then you work the next 8 to 12 as well. It sounds nice, but it really isn't. Most of the time, spent in port, we spent bunkering, loading cargo, so cargo in, cargo off, so we had plenty of time to witness the cargo operations for our project. Christmas, we boarded before Christmas, so we spent Christmas in port in Houston. We enjoyed a wonderful Christmas dinner with the crew and officers. You can see we got lobster tail, shrimp tempura, beef Wellington, you know, they pulled out all the stops for us on Christmas. I mean, it was tough being away from our families, but they did a really good job at helping us feel welcome and at home with the new guys on ship, which was much welcome. So the Panama Canal at the time did not have sufficient water to support ships, and so we planned to pass through the Suez Canal. Panama Canal is filled with local waters, so during severe droughts, all the lakes dry up, and all of a sudden now we have no water for the canal. So we were basically directed towards the Suez Canal. However, this was around the time that, which I believe it's still going on, where the Houthi rebels are drone striking ships. So we were told that it was highly likely that the Houthi rebels will attack our highly unlikely that the Houthi rebels will attack our ship because we are not American or Israeli connected, which is mostly true.
Yeah, so highly unlikely, expanding upon that, they said that we had a risk lower than that of dying in a car accident, of getting bombed. And that's, that's not exactly what we wanted to hear, being on a floating bomb. But they did also reassure us that 4 to 5 Stolt ships pass through the Suez Canal every day, and that the only possible way our ship was attacked is if a drone misfired at us, which probably wouldn't happen because it only happened to 2 ships that so far at the time. And so we departed toward the Bermuda Triangle. We spent New Year's on ship. This is the feast. We had a traditional Filipino New Year's feast, complete with an entire pig, which was crazy. It was really, really good. Not something I would have tried before ship, but you gotta try new things on ship. So we also opened presents with the crew. Like Everett said, we felt very welcome. We watched the clock turn over on the bridge, and we also saw some fireworks over the Bahamas, and that was an unforgettable experience. I really wish I took some pictures. There were cruise ships parked all around us, and so, I mean, that gives you an idea of how cool it was, because people are paying to be there. We were getting paid to be there. Also an update, at about 3 weeks in, the US and the UK decided to team up and bomb Yemen in retaliation for the halt on shipping. So on ship we learned that the missiles to intercept the drones that the Houthis were using cost over $1 million each, and that even though a drone didn't cost that much, and multiple were being fired, and they had a very low chance of even hitting a ship, the US still had to use one missile per drone at least to take care of all of these. So it was not economical for the US to defend these ships. It's actually more cost effective to just let them hit one out of every 7 ships. So the US countered this by bombing Yemen, and this obviously raised the stakes. So was it still safe for us?
So, on our way to the Suez, Stolt Effort stopped 6 hours from Gibraltar, about 4 weeks into our sea term. So basically, like exactly where that star is, pretty much, is exactly where we stopped, pretty much. We were stopped for 4 days, 4 extremely long days, and during that time we went fishing and had a barbecue, which is pretty much unheard of. You can see up here, they had some fresh caught squid. It was delicious. Probably, like, according to them, it was one of the first times they had ever caught anything off the back of the ship. Just take reels of fishing line and then throw it off and then hope that somehow something bites, and it did, which is insane. But in the end, we were thankfully redirected to South Africa and not to the Suez Canal. So when we neared the equator, just going down the coast of Africa pretty much, the ship's coolers stopped being able to cool the ship. Once the ship is cooled with seawater, so once the seawater gets to like 80, 90 degrees, all of a sudden the heat exchange is a lot less efficient, so it was getting a lot hotter everywhere. The water was way too hot, so the engine room was probably over 100 degrees for sure. It sure felt like it was over 100 degrees all the time. It was pretty much unbearable, so working was really difficult when it got as hot as it did, but we still got a good amount of time. We took frequent coffee breaks, and we could kind of cool off a little bit.
This is a video of our ship rolling. Some days are worse than others. This was a pretty decent day. We ended up encountering 7-meter seas at our worst point, which is pretty heavy. It was in the northern seas, so it was hard to sleep. I mean, imagine you're like in your cot and then you roll over. It's like, whoa, what the heck? But we didn't get much sleep, but less time you spend sleeping, the more time you get for your sea term project. So we shifted to the day shift, which was awesome. No longer a 4 to 8. It was now an 8 to 5, like a standard 8 to 5. The work was pretty good. It was mostly grunt tasks, but we did learn a ton. We got to read a lot of manuals. The crew was very helpful in explaining what they were doing to us. And we also got to do something pretty cool. We got to make a new CAD drawing for a coupling flange for a cooling compressor. So the original coupling flange got bent, and they didn't have the drawing for it, so they had us recreate one so that when they were in port, they could have it machined. And that was pretty cool. We spent a lot of time on that because it's going to be a multiple $1,000 part, and we were just two cadet interns, so I hope it was right. Didn't put our names on it, we just wrote Webb Institute. So. Did you feel it?
Oh my god! Yeah, so here you can see this was in the workout room where the ship's like rolling like crazy. That wasn't like staged or anything, that was just how it was. I like to run the treadmill a lot, and the treadmill was kind of oriented fore or aft, so like every time the ship like rolls, like you roll forward, like you roll one way and you're like getting thrown forward, but then you roll the other way and it's like you're running up like a 60-degree ski hill. So that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, something else about it is all the workout equipment was oriented in like a certain way so that to account for the roll, which was pretty cool. And also they had Smith machines, which are where there are walls like for benching. Because you imagine you're benching and whoa. Something else that I did a lot was play basketball with the crew. They had a court on the deck 11. Yeah. and it was very fun. I didn't realize how much the Filipinos were into basketball. Pretty much our entire crew was Filipino, and some of them had the craziest shots I've ever seen. Like their form was really weird, but it always went in, and it didn't matter where they were. They really admired that I was tall and that I could dunk, and I made a lot of friends very quickly when they figured out I could dunk. They also called me a moonster, which is awesome.
So food wasn't always what we were used to, but most of the time it was honestly really good. Probably not what we were expecting from ship food. We were probably expecting it to be a little worse. So you got flounder, all kinds of fish, steak. It was delicious.
Toward the end of our journey, we encountered some excitement. So we were told that there was winch brake testing one morning, and so we went out to see it, and we were also told to stand back about 10 feet because it was dangerous. So basically, there's these winches, and they have a 120-ton load, and you want the winch to release if it exceeds that load, because the worst thing possible would be that the rope that it's attached to snaps, because the amount of force on that rope snapping could cut someone in half if it went backwards. And so they were testing to make sure that once it reaches that 120-ton load, it would give. And during that, our chief officer stuck his hand under the thrust block, which is shown here. And the way it was positioned, there was a stack of pipes and shims, and there's a thrust block on top of it. And you can see right here the marks from whenever this was pressed down against the shims. And so he had his fingers right here adjusting it, and suddenly it activated and he lost 4 of his fingers. He was wearing gloves, and when it happened, he pulled off his gloves and just bits of bone and flesh just flew over the deck. It was crazy.
So we had to take a detour, obviously, to drop off. So we had to drop off the chief officer along the coast of Liberia for treatment. Probably not the best ideal place to receive medical treatment, but that happened. So he was picked up in just a rib. They came with 4 Liberian Coast Guard guys, came up in a rib. We rigged up a special ladder for the chief to come down. The whole process probably took 10 hours or so.
A rib is rigid inflatable boat.
Yeah.
And here's a picture. Just kidding.
Yeah, come on, we were good. There were some pretty cool sights to see. So you can see this is just the ship went up at night while we're on the way. Ship in the morning while on the way as well. And here is the final path we took. Probably not the most optimal way to get to South Africa from Houston, but that's good. That's just the way the chip fell. When we arrived at South Africa, it took absolutely forever to get into port, which is 3 days. But it was the longest 3 days, probably that we have ever experienced. And the pilot eventually came by helicopter, which was super cool. That is the helicopter that came to pick them up. It probably took a minute probably for them to get the pilot on there, but it took 3 days for them to send the helicopter in the first place. And after a long journey, we eventually arrived in South Africa, and you can see that's just a picture of us getting off the ship. Then after disembarking, we need to go through immigration and customs in order to catch our flight home later in the day. Some of the other guys on the ship wanted to stay to see the sights of South Africa. We were okay with not doing that. So you can see, just going home, once back online, we had a very easy time adjusting. You can see right there is one of the monkeys that was in port. There were all kinds of wild monkeys in port, only in the port, weirdly enough, but they were mobbing everybody. If you had food, they were coming after you. Durban was a lot different than the United States. There was trash everywhere and no running water or electricity. It was, we kind of take things for granted here in the United States, but they have it pretty bad in some of the other places. And we bribed immigration by putting money with our passports. So our agent told us when we were in the port that we could either get through immigration the normal way or his way, and his way involved giving him 10 USD apiece, which was the way that we chose to take. And it took a lot less time than it typically does.
Yeah, so our flights back home were very long. We flew separately. It took me almost 30 hours to get home, and I ended up getting a middle seat, of course. When we got home, we finished our C-term projects and took a well-needed rest. So, thank you, Stolt. We love this experience at sea, and we learned a great deal about life on ship and how things are run in a successful business. But most importantly, we learned that plans change. Even when told it would be 4 hours before that helicopter would come, it still took almost 4 days, and it just emphasizes how flexible you have to be in this business.
And thank you to Webb for helping us get home safe, all in one piece. Everyone at Webb made sure to keep us in the loop, and that's what made it a big success. So thank you to Emily, Dean Warner, and everybody who helped make it happen. So thank you to everybody. That's it.
For the freshmen and sophomore parents who are scared right now, this is not a typical C term. I just want to make that clear.